This is HTV West. Now we join Fiona Armstrong at ITN in London.
The news from ITN.
Iran says a hostage release is coming. It could be Brian Keenan. Brooke gives him 3 weeks to fix Ulster's all-party talks. Martina celebrates her record 9th Wimbledon victory. But Chiltern bows out with a bungle as England go down to Italy. Good evening. Iran's state news agency said today that a Western hostage held in Lebanon could soon be released, and it's thought that it may be the Irishman Brian Keenan. He's been missing for more than 4 years. The short news agency report from Beirut said simply, a Western hostage held in Lebanon will probably be released soon, informed sources said Saturday. The sources declined to disclose the name of the hostage, but hinted that he is most probably a European national. Indications that it could be the Belfast teacher Brian Keenan came from Syrian army sources in Beirut. Recently there have been intensive efforts by the Irish government to get him freed.
A poster of Brian Keenan hangs on the wall of his old office in Belfast. From there he took up a job teaching English at the American University in Beirut. With an Irish passport he thought he was safe, even joining protests against hostage taking. But he became a victim himself 4 years ago. Since then his sisters have campaigned tirelessly for his release. One of them went to the Iranian embassy in Dublin to sign the book of condolence after the recent earthquake. And tonight both are waiting by the telephone.
We have been down this road so many times over the last 4 years, and I wouldn't get too optimistic. I think there maybe is a feeling somebody's going to come out, and as Brenda says, as long as it's someone, we'll be happy with that.
We are making a total all-out effort constantly, using every means at our disposal, our ambassadors down there, our friends in the community, and I think the Keenan family know that. Brian Keenan's sisters particularly know what we've been doing. We keep in touch with them very closely, and they have from time to time expressed their appreciation of what we're doing.
Here in Dublin, the Irish government says it's heard nothing official about any impending release. But privately, officials are hopeful that weeks of negotiations, often behind the scenes, will yield a positive result. For example, in May, the Keenan case was discussed by Irish Foreign Minister Gerry Collins and his Iranian counterpart Veliati at the United Nations in New York. And a month later, Hussein Mousavian, Iran's political director, was in Dublin for more talks, later meeting Irish MPs who visited Iran.
Having spoken to Mr. Mousavian, who was very close to Mr. Rafsanjani, the Iranian Prime Minister, he certainly indicated that he would work very hard to have Brian Keenan released. But having said that, again, until I see the whites of Mr. Keenan's eyes, then and only then will I believe that he is released.
But tonight, Irish diplomats are hoping there may be significance in the absence of the Iranian ambassador from his embassy. Simon Cole, ITN, in Dublin.
It was the ruins of the Iranian earthquake which may have given Iran the will to bring about another hostage release. The foreign aid which poured into the country has helped moderates like President Rafsanjani argue that the West could be a valuable friend. Despite Iran's need for Western economic help, there's still strong opposition from hardliners to any deal with countries such as Britain. But experts say the release of an Irish hostage would be more acceptable.
The Iranians at the moment are notorious supporters of the IRA. They see Ireland, the island, as the underdog fighting Britain.
Tonight in Beirut, the rumours abound. One says that 2 hostages are about to be released, not just one. And an unconfirmed report suggests that Church of England envoy Terry Waite will be among them. The Archbishop of Canterbury, who was in York today, said he'd heard nothing.
I haven't had any reports straight to me.
But Terry Waite's cousin says he doesn't believe he will be released.
Terry was taken under rather special circumstances, and I think he is a major trump card, if you like, up the sleeve of the terrorists who are holding him. And I've always feared, this is my personal belief, but it's my personal fear that he will be among the last, if not the last, to be released.
The last hostage to be freed was Frank Reid. His release and that of fellow American Robert Paulhill were first predicted by the same Iranian news agency responsible for today's report. But forecasting events in Beirut is notoriously difficult, and even Iran, with its considerable influence in the area, has made many predictions of hostage releases, which have in the end come to nothing.
The Northern Ireland Secretary, Peter Brook, has set himself a 3-week deadline for a formula to start all-party talks between unionists and nationalists. The Irish Prime Minister, Charles Haughey, pledged flexibility and sincerity in his government's support for any negotiations.
Peter Brook's initiative in Northern Ireland has run into two main problems. First, the issue of when to involve Dublin in talks. Second, a shortage of time because the Commons rises in 3 weeks. The meeting to discuss economic development was pre-planned, but it came hours after Ulster unionists blamed Mr Haughey for firing an Exocet at the talks. Yesterday, one leading unionist called for Dublin to be excluded altogether, but today Mr Haughey said all sides must keep talking.
We will continue our support, and we will continue that support for his initiative with sincerity and flexibility.
The Northern Ireland Secretary is anxious to find common ground between Dublin and the unionists within the next 3 weeks.
I think if I hadn't made a statement by the time the House rose, I think eyebrows would be raised as to whether I actually would be ever making one.
Despite Mr Haughey's words, there is still hard talking to do, especially on the issue of when Dublin gets involved in the talks. So Mr Brook will go to see the Irish Foreign Affairs Minister, Gerry Collins, again. The future of his initiative hangs on the success of their discussions. Jonathan Munro, ITN, in Belfast.
Several hardline members of Albania's ruling Communist Party have been sacked tonight as the government tries to deal with the crisis involving 6,000 asylum seekers packed into foreign embassies in the capital, Tirana. They've now been told that they can leave the country, escorted by foreign officials. Latest reports say 3,000 refugees are inside the West German embassy. More than 1,500 are in the Italian, over 1,000 in the French, and 40 in the Hungarian embassy.
The refugees are elated tonight after being told by the government here that they will all be given passports and exit visas to leave the country. There are certainly hundreds of troops and possibly several thousand on the streets in Tirana tonight. These troops are purely acting as human blockades to prevent more asylum seekers jumping over the walls into the embassies.
President Gorbachev has persuaded Communist Party delegates to back down from plans to hold individual votes of confidence on members of the Politburo. He'd warned them that if this happened, it would be the end of the party.
The Communist Party went to war with itself today in scenes unthinkable during the carefully orchestrated congresses of the past. The entire Politburo faces reselection, and a sweeping shake-up at the top seems increasingly likely. At one point, a frustrated Mikhail Gorbachev told delegates, "If you want to bury the party, go ahead." He was objecting to a proposal under which the Congress should take a vote of confidence in each member of the Politburo in turn, proposing instead a single vote on the leadership as a whole. The question remains undecided tonight. Leading Gorbachev's supporters encountered a storm of criticism. The Politburo ideology chief, Vadim Medvedev, faced a delegate brandishing a red card. "You know what this means in football," the man declared. "I'm giving it to you." And Medvedev was accused of leaving the party like a car with no engine. He retorted, "What sort of ideology is it if one man can destroy it so quickly?" Mr. Gorbachev has been struggling to regain control over an unruly Congress. His personal leadership remains unchallenged, but he may find himself saddled with a Politburo with an ideology very different from his own. Tim Hewitt, ITN, Moscow.
Here, the Conservative Party chairman, Kenneth Baker, has launched a strong attack on the Labour Party, claiming that it offered no positive ideas for change.
Recent appearance on Panorama tested people's ability to stay awake. And then, if they were awake, it tested their ability to believe what they had heard. On television, as elsewhere, Neil Kinnock is living proof that Labour's policies don't add up.
Now with news of the women's singles final at Wimbledon and the rest of the day's sport, here's Giles Smith.
Martina Navratilova today became the first woman to win 9 Wimbledon singles titles. She took Helen Wills Moody's record of 8 that stood since the 1930s. She beat fellow countrywoman Zina Garrison 6-4, 6-1.
Garrison was always going to be the underdog, having beaten Navratilova only once in 28 meetings before today. But the girl who'd done Martina a huge favour by knocking out Monica Seles and Steffi Graf briefly showed why she'd been able to. But once Martina got over her initial nerves, she began to play with total authority, realising this was her great chance of history. She took the first set 6-4. It hadn't been a stroll, but Martina knew she was on her way. The second set looked a walkover on paper. In fact, it was far from that, Zina fully stretching the 8-times champion. But when it came to the big points, there was really only one player who was going to end up the winner. Martina had her sights firmly on that record 9th title. It finally came in just over an hour and a half. Martina was ecstatic. So were the team of people who'd helped her to the record. And they were the first to be thanked. Like Pat Cash 3 years ago, Martina climbed up through the crowd to share her pleasure. Kisses for all of them, people who'd made her believe she could do it.
It was a very special moment that I wanted to share with the people that had been there with me every step of the way, that had bent over backwards to help me achieve my goal. I've never been drunk in my life, but this may be the day. Never ever, no, I don't think I'm so high, I said I need some drugs to bring me back down to earth.
Finally, the formal presentation to the woman who must now surely be ranked the greatest of all time.
In the Cornhill Test match, Eddie Hemmings has bowled England into a strong position. The veteran off-spinner took 6 for 58 as New Zealand were all out for 249, 186 behind England with 2 days to go.
The New Zealand struggled to avoid the follow-on, looked good for just an hour. Then Wright edged Malcolm to Russell and the slide had started. 6 overs later, same bowler, same result. This time Jones sent back for just 2. Chris Lewis took up the charge after lunch. Crowe became his first Test victim. But once again, Franklin was proving difficult to dislodge. Another slow-motion innings took him to 66, while at the other end, Greatbatch managed 45 before Malcolm finished him off. Eddie Hemmings, meanwhile, had been patiently waiting for his chance. Franklin finally made a mistake and Smith picked him off. It was the start of a magnificent spell by the veteran Hemmings. Hadley his second victim, courtesy of Atherton. But with 8 wickets down, New Zealand reached the follow-on figure of 236, ensuring that England must bat again. All that was left was for Hemmings to finish them off. He ended the day with the memorable figures of 6 for 58. By far the best in his Test career. Peter Staunton, ITN Sport, Edgbaston.
Bobby Robson's tenure as England's soccer manager ended tonight with his team coming 4th in the World Cup. England lost a superb third-place match, 2-1 to the host Italy, but it needed a late penalty to seal it.
The cameras gathered to record the end of an era, Bobby Robson's last appearance on the England bench. In no mood to surrender, Robson's most loyal servant, Peter Shilton, under pressure as the Italians carved huge holes through his defence. Ferrara denied, Schillaci of all people failing to pick up the pieces. Then, with the World Cup hosts in full flow, Baggio kept out by a man almost twice his age. Urged on by a tiny band of supporters, England replied. Platt's cross beating Zenga, Lineker desperately unlucky. There was a party spirit on the England bench until the 70th minute, and the unthinkable. Shilton fails to see the predatory Baggio, Schillaci for once the creator, Baggio benefiting from Shilton's lapse. 10 minutes later, and Platt's leap has his manager dancing, along with the England supporters. But when Walker brought down Schillaci, the man from Sicily stepped up to fire his 6th goal of the tournament, ensuring Italy's 3rd place and a losing finale for the England manager.
I'm very sad and I shall miss it a great deal. You know, it's been
my life for 8 years, and that's going to go. But I have to readjust and, you know, clear my mind and reorganise my mind to other things now. But it's been a marvellous part of my life.
The host nation threw a giant party. The players of both sides joining in. But saying goodbye to international football, England's longest-serving player.
I've always said I wanted to finish when I was at the top. I've had 20 years with England now, 125 appearances, and you know, I feel it's time for me to give the younger goalkeepers a chance.
So the Robson era ends, with England undoubtedly restored to the elite of world football. Graham Taylor is now expected to be confirmed as Robson's successor early next week. Paul Davis, ITN, Bowery.
Finally, Prince Charles was back on public duty today for the first time since breaking his arm playing polo. He gave the alternative royal wave as he arrived for the Airborne Force's Golden Jubilee celebrations at Aldershot. And when it came to meeting service families, it was a left-handed handshake. And that's all from us for the moment. Good night.
Sunday, live from Rome, Brian Moore leads ITV's superior coverage of the World Cup final, unless the Gremlins have their way.
Gremlins, eh? Little monsters.
They're cute and cuddly, but they don't mind enjoying themselves. Gremlins. And later, Goldie Hawn gets some useful advice in Swing Shift.
It's your own life. You got a right to be happy.
I'm married. Don't you understand that?
Gremlins and Swing Shift, a major movie double, and the World Cup final, only on ITV.
Good evening. Well, it's been a day of very sharp contrast right across the country. Even just looking at the temperatures, up to 24 in the southeast and a mere 13 degrees Celsius in Aviemore this afternoon, and that's only 55 degrees Fahrenheit. During the night tonight, that contrast continuing. Scotland, the rain clearing away, becoming much clearer. Further south, outbreaks of drizzly rain getting into northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales too, and down the west coast. But the southeast and central parts staying very warm and muggy, 16, becoming cooler and fresher over Scotland. Tomorrow then, here's how the day starts. Scotland and Northern Ireland quite bright with a few showers. Band of sort of drizzly rain stretching from the southwest right through to northern parts of Wales and through in towards Yorkshire. Southeast brightening up for a while through the morning, but as the afternoon goes on, you'll find that brighter weather working its way southwards and some showers turning up in the southeast, perhaps one or two of those showers rather heavy. At the same time, some quite heavy showers coming into the western parts of Scotland. Temperatures tomorrow maintaining a bit of a contrast. Very warm, still very muggy down in the southeast, 24, 25. That's into the upper 70s Fahrenheit. Further north, 18 or 19, just around the mid-60s, but becoming quite windy in Scotland and Northern Ireland. Winds perhaps touching gale force in the northwest. That's it from me for the moment. Here's tomorrow's summary.
Now, the weather forecast for the HTV West area for tomorrow and Monday. Tomorrow will be overcast with outbreaks of drizzle and hill fog, but should clear around midday to give a partly cloudy afternoon with sunny intervals and scattered showers. Maximum temperature expected to be around 20 degrees Celsius, that's 68 degrees Fahrenheit, with a moderate westerly wind. And the outlook for Monday, the following day, partly cloudy with sunny intervals and scattered showers. Temperatures much the same as tomorrow's. That's the weather forecast for the West.
The Working Men's Club at Shirehampton in Bristol, scene of the latest in a string of armed robberies. The club steward and his wife were locking up for the night when they were confronted by 5 men armed with a variety of weapons, sawn-off shotguns, a pistol, even a carving knife. They marched the steward back inside, then they began forcing the gaming machines and pocketing the silver. As they left, one of the men turned to the steward and shook hands. But the gang made a big mistake. They left behind a black sports bag containing a torn T-shirt, the end of a snooker cue, some tools and a single 8mm cartridge. If you can identify any of those things, it might help police catch a gang who are probably responsible for 2 other raids at Eastville and Bath. Someone must know them. Ring Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. It could earn you a reward. Ring Crime Stoppers now.